Hi, folks. Welcome to another live Ask Greg Anything session. I think this is number 3, number 4. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think we're going to keep track of these. But welcome. We're here to answer all your questions. I usually do these for an hour. It's 4 o'clock here in Arizona. We're going to do this until 5 p.m. And I'm going to try to answer as many questions as possible. So if you have a question, just leave it down in the comments. My team is going through the questions and then sending them to me. So if we find anything good, then we'll be talking about them. I see already some questions, so we'll get started in a second. But I wanted to say hi to the people in the chat. I see we have Mr. B. I know he or she, or Mr. I guess he leaves a lot of comments on our videos. CMYK FPV. And then we have a few other people coming in. So we have 46 people and watching right now. So we'll get started. We'll start with the first question here. We have a question from Pure Enjoyable Sleep, which is what I do every single night. As a drone pilot, I would like to know the difference between mapping and surveying and which drones are best for each. So I'll start with that second part of the question, which is which drones are best for mapping. We get that question quite a bit. You can do mapping with any drone, but obviously some drones are going to give you better quality. The things that you're looking for in a drone is going to be a mechanical shutter, which means that instead of an electronic shutter, which means that the image is going to the shutter is going to open and close mechanically in order to take the picture. That prevents some blur into your pictures. The best drones for that are the Mavic 3 Enterprise at the moment, the Phantom 4P, Phantom 4 Pro, which is a slightly older model. The Inspire 2 had an X4S, I think was the lens that does that. So all these drones are pretty good with this. You can go also with a larger drone and with other cameras that are a bit more obscure, but at the moment these are the best drones to do this. Now, as far as the difference between mapping and surveying. Surveying means that a surveyor got their hands on it and looked at the data and then basically stamped it and said the data is good. A surveyor is going to take a specific license in a specific state. So typically drone pilots that are not surveyors cannot say that they're doing survey type work. They're doing mapping, which is a little bit different. So mapping is going to be less precise in theory, or at least officially. It may be the exact same product, except the survey is going to be somebody who is gone and has been approved to call it a survey. So that's the difference between those. All right, next question. We have here, cameraman Steve. I think this is on Facebook. I have a question. When you're on top of a parking structure that has 4 levels in about 60 feet up in the air, and you're doing an orbit around the building, so down below are people and cars, you're transitioning over people and cars in this scenario. Is this legal? Cameraman Steve, no, it is not legal unless you have what's called a categorized drone, category 1, 2, 3, or 4. I want this to be clear. I know I'm going to answer that question several times tonight, but I'm going to say it so that you can remember it. Anytime you fly over people or people in moving vehicles, you need to have a categorized drone. That's the requirement. It doesn't matter if it's a transitioning, if it's only for a second, if it's whatever it is, you have to have a categorized drone in order to fly over people or people in moving vehicles. So in this case, you would need to have a Cat 1, Cat 2, Cat 3, or Cat 4 drone. There's a few category 1 drones that are out there. There's very, very few other ones. There's a category 3 drone that has been approved, but that's about it. So no, in this case, it wouldn't be legal. Okay, next, CMYK drone, remote ID compliance for whoops. Is this actually practical by the deadline? Flying 2S outdoors in the garden and parks. So 2S drone, I'm assuming probably a pretty small drone. If it's sub 250 grams, 0.55 pounds, and you're flying for recreational purposes, you do not need to have remote ID. For every other situation, you will. Is it practical? We saw a new product at AUVSI in Colorado that was 3 grams, or they were saying it's actually 2 grams that you can put in. So very, very tiny that you can put inside of your FPV. It's a bypass for the it's got a GPS unit. It's got a Bluetooth unit as well in it, and it sends the remote ID module. So very small, $49, and it already has a GPS chip in it that you can actually reuse for your flight as well. So Is it practical? I don't know. That's you make the decision on that, but that is available. Hey, Greg, I want to film freighters and the public traffic cars flying by. I don't know what that means. Will I be flagged for posting that on YouTube? Well, YouTube isn't going to flag you, but just don't fly over people. That goes back to what I said, over people or moving vehicles without having a categorized drone. That's the way to do it legally. I'm preparing to do a project where I'll be flying a Mavic 2 Pro inside of a large arena. I don't expect to have GPS. Do you have any suggestions for me? Okay. So that's a good question. So you'll be inside in a large arena. I guess my question is this. Is there any chance that at any moment you will get a GPS signal during that flight? Because that could be trouble. If you take off without GPS, the drone will still fly. It'll just fly without position hold, but you're inside of a building, so you'll be fine. I don't really see an issue with it. Just realize that there is no GPS to do attitude hold, or position hold to keep the aircraft from moving sideways. So if there is wind, which you're indoors, there shouldn't be a whole lot, then it's going to just keep on going like this. It's not going to stop immediately. If you've ever flown in attitude mode, this is what it's going to look like with the drone. So that's what I'm going to say about that. And then, by the way, inside the FAA doesn't have any jurisdiction, but I need to mention this. Your insurance company might want to know what you're going to be doing inside if you want to have insurance coverage. Jim is saying, I'm not yet 107 licensed, though I'm taking your course and plan to become licensed. When I'm licensed, can I use my pre-107 previously taken videos and photos for commercial or public sharing? Yes, you can. It's a bit tricky, but yes, you can in this case. The bottom line with 107 versus not 107, it's all about the intent of the flight at the time of recording. So if you recorded all these videos beforehand recreationally, then you can technically use them and then sell them in the future. Comment from YouTube from Evan. Is there any news on any manufacturers getting close to having their drone classified as Category 2? Your guess is as good as ours in this case. Category 2 drones, there hasn't seemed to be a whole lot of interest from manufacturers to create Category 2 drones, so we're not sure. I haven't heard anything recently, so like I said, your guess is as good as mine. DJI Avata or DJI FPV, which is best for real estate work? I'm going to have to say, I'm guessing that you want to do this indoors. If you want to do this indoors, the Avata by far will be much better than the FPV because it has integrated prop guards. It's going to be easier to navigate and fly indoors. So, I would say that. YouTube, Jorge is asking, Air 2S is too old to buy it. If you have a good deal on the Air 2S, it's definitely not too old. It's a great drone. It was our favorite drone for a long time until we started using the Mavic 3 for pretty much everything, but it's a great platform. So if you can find one at a good deal, I would say do that. Facebook comments from Trey. Trey says, do you feel with the vast number of drones that DJI has been putting out makes the previous release obsolete, or do you feel it's based on the need of the pilots? I hear you mention that P4P all the time, so it seems that drones is not obsolete, although newer drones and new technology in them. That's a great question. New drones are going to come out all the time. I have this laptop. I love this laptop. It's got an M1 chip in it, and I foresee that for the next 3 or 4 years, I'm going to be using it because it's doing everything that I wanted to do. I've had other laptops in the past that I've used for many, many years because it's continued working. Sure, there was a new one that came out and it was faster. Do I need faster? No, I don't. Same thing with drones. I feel like, you have a new drone that comes out. It's got a sensor that's slightly bigger. Is the sensor that you have now too small? Is it a limitation? Or do you want to have the latest and greatest? Do you need an extra sensor? Do you need 5 more minutes of battery? In most cases, even an Air 2S, like I just mentioned, is still doing the job. I heard somebody the other day I don't remember what I was on, but somebody else was mentioning that they were still flying the Mavic 2 Pro because they were flying it on the set, and the quality that they were getting out of the Mavic 2 Pro, as long as there was enough light, was good enough for what they were doing. So it worked for them. They didn't have to upgrade to the Mavic 3. So look at what you have. The best camera you have is the one that you have in your pocket, right? That's what people say in photography. So I would say don't always fall for the hype and getting the brand new drone. YouTube, Jim Anderson is saying, if you launch from a bluff at 3,000 feet and fly out over the ravine, are you flying over the legal limit? And yes, the answer is going to be yes. Remember, it's all about AGL, above ground level altitude. So if your drone is right here, and this is the table right here, I don't know if you can see the edge of the table, but the drone flies over here, it's 400 feet above the ground. Now it's like 1,500 feet above the ground, then obviously you're over 400 feet AGL, then you're technically not legal. So if you're right at the edge of a canyon and then you fly over the canyon, then you're more than 400 feet above the ground, and it's technically not legal as per the FAA. Fantasy Footage says, how do drone photographers and videographers work hourly? Do they fly the whole time? Won't they use up all their batteries if they have 4+ hours a day? Well, yeah, you definitely have to make sure that you have enough batteries. A lot of people just have a big collection of batteries. Our friend Jared that does mapping, I don't know how many dozens of batteries he has, but I know it's a lot, and they just keep track of them. Our friend, who else was I talking to recently? Who was it? Yeah, Ken has a lot of batteries as well. And then Sparky was telling us about his batteries for his Inspire 2, and he has also a ton of batteries. So yeah, you just have to make sure that you buy the right amount for what you do. Why are news organizations allowed to fly over emergencies like trail derailments? News organizations don't have any specific rules compared to everybody else. So if it's illegal to fly near emergencies and be in the way of manned aircraft traffic, then a news organization cannot do it as well. So they're no different. There's no special treatment here. Do you think the banning drones made by China will affect to not governmental agencies or personal work in the future? This is a tough prediction to make, but I'm going to be pretty confident in saying that I don't think we will see a ban of DJI for civilians, for non-governmental agencies, but yeah, you never know what politicians are capable of. So I hope we don't get to that point for sure. I think it would be... well, it would be pretty much the death of this industry if that came to that point, but we'll see. I'm trying to stay positive here. The only way that this could happen, by the way, is really around the FCC. If the FCC decided to pull the authorization, not the only way, but one of the ways, more likely, if the FCC pulled an approval from DJI, then you wouldn't be able to technically fly it in the United States. I'm sure a lot of people would still do it, but it is what it is. They wouldn't be able to sell new drones because they wouldn't be approved to do that. Flying over people and moving vehicles. Can you do this with the Mavic, the Mini 3? The FAA seems to make the rules too vague. Adding prop guards definitely take it out of Category 1. What's the solve? Chris, the Category 1 is a self-certification, so the drone has to be under 250 grams with everything attached on takeoff, including prop guards, like you said. And if you don't put prop guards, then you have to be comfortable that this drone does not cause lacerations. And if you think the Mavic, the Mini 3 does not cause laceration, talk to your friend Vic, who just put his finger near one of them a little too close and get a big laceration from his Mini 3. So he can share the pictures with you, but the Mini 3 without prop guards would not be considered not causing laceration. I don't know if that makes sense. So in this case, it needs prop guards, which takes it over 250 grams, which makes it disqualifies it from being a Category 1. So no, unfortunately, I don't think the Mini 3 is going to be Category 1 anytime soon. Somebody's asking, still good to buy a DJI MT3 versus American made? That's up to you. If you can find an equivalent MT3, I'm guessing is the Matrice 3. Matrice? No, Mavic. What is that? What's MT3? M3T, maybe Mavic 3 thermal. Over an American-made drone. I don't think there is any equivalent American-made drone that has the specification of the Mavic 3 thermal. if that's what you're talking about. So tough at this stage. But we have the Mavic 3 thermal in the office. Absolutely love the drone. So I think, yeah, it's a great buy if you're allowed to use it for the jobs that you're planning on doing. Somebody's asking if I'm allowed to film freighters, edit the video, and post them to YouTube without breaking FAA regulation with my Mavic 3. Yeah, I mean, I don't... Bradley's asking this. Breaking the FAA regulation really depends on a lot of things. I mean, was the airspace open? Did you maintain visual line of sight? Did you fly over people? Did you fly over all these things? As long as you meet all the regulation, then you should be able to put those on your YouTube channel. Yes. Does flying the Mini 3 Pro with the goggles violate VLOS? Oh, great question, Doug. VLOS, visual line of sight. So I'm going to assume that you're talking about Part 107 operation here. Under Part 107, 107.31 says two things. It says that both the pilot and the visual observer, when you're flying FPV, both of them need to be able to see the aircraft at all times, which means that when you're flying under your goggles here and you have a visual observer, if you take your goggles off, you need to be able to see where the drone is located. At the same time, your VO, at all times during the flight, needs to also be able to see where the drone is located. The second part of 107.31 says that at all times, at least one of these persons need to be seeing the drone and looking at the drone. So if you have the goggles on, obviously you cannot do that, so you would use your visual observer. So as long as if you remove the goggles, you can see it, and as long as your VO can see the drone throughout the entire flight, then you're good to go. So flying the Mini 3 Pro without a VO would violate VLOS, visual line of sight rules. John says, what constitutes an obstacle when it comes to being able to fly 400 feet above an obstacle as long as you're within 200 feet, he says, in uncontrolled airspace? That would be 400 feet within 400 feet, by the way. There's no 200 feet in there. A rock cliff is not an obstacle. The mountaintop is not an obstacle. It's a man-made obstacle. So an antenna, a tall building, whatever it is. But an obstacle is just that. It's not terrain. Terrain is what you're describing with a rock cliff and a mountaintop. That's defined as terrain. An obstacle would be something man-made. So, and by the way, that rule is only, like you said, John, it's only in airspace that does not require approval. And then it's only under Part 107 rules. If you're a recreational flyer, you cannot fly higher than 400 feet AGL, even if you're within a close distance from an object. That's just not a rule that's available to recreational flyers. All I'm trying to find out is if recreational pilots need to use remote ID. Yes, they do need to use remote IDs if they are flying drones over 250 grams, 0.55 pounds. So an easy way to remember this: if your drone needs registration, it needs remote ID starting September 16th of this year, 2023. If it needs registration, it needs to have remote ID. So if I fly for fun, farmer wants the video and donates to me, I do not ask for it. Is that okay? If somebody is asking you to do a video, that's a Part 107 flight. You cannot do that as a recreational pilot. So you need to have a Part 107 certificate, in this case, a remote pilot certificate. Let's put it this way. Anytime somebody says, can you do this footage for me? That's no longer a recreational flight. It doesn't matter if you get paid or not, then you need to have a Part 107 certificate. Thanks for answering your question, but I would like to know how you are doing. I am doing awesome. We just had a cool recording today, or started recording a big video that's going to be, I think, very funny, where we have 8 different characters that are interacting with each other. And I'm not going to say much more than that, but it's been a lot of work with the team, and we had a great day doing that. So I'm pretty excited about this. Well, it looks like we're getting pretty close. Okay, follow-up on remote ID question, talking about modules. Modules are coming, and I know there's been a lot of questions, and people are asking, which module should I buy? The answer is don't buy any modules just yet. And the reason I'm saying this is because we don't have a good. We don't have all of them just yet. I know that there is more coming out, more of them made in the US as well, which I think is something that we should support. And the prices are coming down as well. The first module that we saw was $199. We saw a lot of modules that were sub $50. I'm hoping that we can get to the point where we can see some that are sub $20. To me, $20 is the optimal point where people are gonna not hesitate to buy it. So we'll see what we get out of this. But I saw a module from Drone Tag that was $49. That was 3 grams. They call it the BS, and they call it the BS for a good reason, because they don't believe in remote ID, and they don't believe that FPV drones should have those remote ID modules on top, so they call it the BS, which I thought was kind of funny. But they also had other options that were $79, $199, and then $299. Now you may be asking, what's the difference between all those? The functionalities, one of them was also compatible with drones in Europe, sent a whole lot more information. They had Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and just a whole lot more stuff. The ability to do connect to 4G as well. So that's the the $199 module. And then we saw one from, and I'm not going to remember from who, but I think it was $39 or $29 as well. So pretty cheap. And they were the company that makes the Cube. I don't remember who they are, but that was one of them. And then we saw another one that was made in the US that was also $199. I didn't really understand all of that, but yeah, that's kind of what we saw so far. Again, we're still pretty far out. By around August, we're going to do a video comparing all of these modules that we have and then see which one would work best for you. There's different options depending if you're building your own drone, if you're putting it on top of a drone, depending on how much you want to spend. So there's quite a few things in here. Okay, next question. Will you do a deep dive course on the Mavic 3 Pro? We've been talking about this in the office, and we have a deep dive on the Mavic 3 and the Mavic 3 Cine. The Mavic 3 Pro is not that much different than the Mavic 3 and the 3 Cine. So if you enroll in the Mavic 3 course that we have, we'll probably do a little bit of an update to talk about what the 3 Pro can do. But quite frankly, the user interface is the same. The camera is mostly the same. All the props, the batteries, everything else is the same. So it's mostly the same drone, just an additional lens, an additional camera in it, which by the way is awesome. That 3X lens is just the sweet spot between the 1 and the 7X. And really, really enjoy having that available. So probably not a deep dive specifically for that, but adding more information for sure. Chris is saying, are all the new DJI drones coming out this year remote ID compliant? The Mavic 3 Pro, for example? Yes, the DJI has made their drones compliant for over a year now. Even the older drones, they're making compliant now. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, any drone that you'll see, as a matter of fact, I should say that, every drone that has been manufactured after December of last year, of 2022, is technically required to have remote ID in it when it's being manufactured. Now, whether it's happening or not is a different story. Whether it's enforced or not is a different story. But by law, it has to happen. So if you buy a new drone and it was manufactured after December of 2022, it needs to have remote ID in it. And if it doesn't, you may be entitled to compensation. No, just kidding. But you might want to talk to someone about that, because that's by law, they're supposed to do it. Somebody's asking, John is asking, what was your first drone and what is your favorite, not super expensive drone? My first drone was a Phantom 1. That was a DJI Phantom 1. That's when DJI didn't have a feed back to the controller. All you had was a controller and a drone, and then you put a GoPro underneath it. Didn't even have a gimbal. I remember buying a cheap gimbal on eBay that I could put on. This was around 2014 when I first moved to Arizona. And flew this thing all over the place, crashed it once. It wasn't super stable. There were a lot of flyaways back then with these drones, so you had a lot more chances of losing the drone and it going somewhere than you do these days. So, but it was fun. It would get some funny footage back then. And I thought the technology was just amazing. And we've come a long ways. As far as favorite drone that's not very expensive, I'm going to tell you right now, the Mini 3 Pro is from DJI, is by far my favorite. I took it to France last year when I went to visit my family. And that's the drone that I took with me because it was small, compact, and it just absolutely awesome. With the little gray controller, the RC, the DJI RC, you can get in the air in a matter of minutes and then get amazing footage. The battery lasts for a long time with a bigger battery, and it was just amazing. Although I did fly with a smaller battery in Europe because I wanted to stay under the 250 gram limit so that I didn't have to do all the paperwork and all the annoying stuff. So, are there any expos coming up in the Northeast that you know of? In the Northeast, I don't know if Ohio qualifies as the Northeast, but that's the next thing we're going to be at, which is Flight Fest in Ohio. That's coming up in June. Is it June? July. I don't know. I lost Jason in my earpiece. He's sleeping. June. So yeah, that's where we'll be. I don't know of any other one that are in the Northeast coming up. Okay, next question. When flying my Mini 3 Pro, I'm always afraid if I might be breaking any rules. I usually check lands and ask for authorization. Is there any rules that I might need to check? So my question is, have you done land? Have you done trust, which is, I'm guessing you're flying for recreational purposes. If you haven't done trust will help you get familiar with all the rules. I definitely recommend that you go out there and do that. You can do that on our website, trust.pilotinstitute.com. It's free, takes 30 minutes. It's actually required by the FAA to do it, and that should give you a good idea. I'm also going to put a link here in Recreational Flying Made Easy. This is the course that we created that's free as well for recreational pilots, so you can basically go and see all the rules that you need to learn in order to fly safely. Do you think there's an Air 3 coming out? I do. We actually talked about this with Jason when we were on our way to Colorado. We were wondering if the Mini and the Mavic 3 was enough or if there was going to be something in between. We do believe that there is an in-between, like around the $1,200 price range that's not covered at the moment. And we think that's kind of the sweet spot for the Air. We were trying to debate what we would like to see in it. If there was going to be the vertical format that we see in the Mini 3, if there was going to be maybe a half-inch sensor or 1-inch sensor, probably a 1-inch sensor since we have the 4/3 on the Mavic 3. So we're kind of speculating on all that, but I do believe that it's in DJI's best interest to have a drone for every single pricing group, whatever you want to call it. So we'll see. We'll see if we're right on this one. If a public safety officer sees you flying and asks you for help to search for a person, can you help as a recreational flyer? That is a tough question. So I'll give you the legal and I'll give you what I think I would do. And neither of these are good advice. I don't know. Well, the first one is good advice. From a legal standpoint, no, you cannot, because now technically somebody's asking you to fly. It's no longer recreational. Now, if there is a person missing and you need to go find them, I would do it, because you're going to do it safely. You're going to make sure that you don't hit anybody else. You're going to use common sense, and then you potentially save somebody's life. So at this stage, if you don't endanger anybody else's life and you're flying for recreational purposes, you know what you're doing. Just go and do it. Okay, go save an old person or a young or a baby that's lost somewhere, or anybody in between. I think I would not hesitate 1 second. Is there a difference between the settings you can get with the Mini 3 versus the Classic? So the main difference between the Classic and the Mavic 3, just the Mavic 3 normal, standard, whatever you want to call it, is the number of lenses that you have available and the number of zooms. So the Mavic 3 has 2 lenses. It's got the 7x zoom and then the regular 4/3 sensor with the 1x zoom. The Classic only has the 1x, so that's really the biggest difference between those two. In a small town, I'm wanting to fly over and get videos of the courthouse. It's not an FAA-controlled airspace. Is this something I can still do? Police station is also attached to the courthouse. Thanks for your help. As long as the airspace is good, as long as you don't fly over people or people in moving vehicles, as long as you fly within visual line of sight and all those good things, as long as you follow all the rules, there is no reason why you cannot fly over the courthouse. Now, with that being said, I'm going to add, be careful, there might be restrictions for the actual land usage on the courthouse. So they may tell you that you cannot take off or land from the courthouse land, but otherwise, if you fly from somewhere else, again, as long as you maintain visual line of sight, then you should be good to go. Next question. What's going on with the government bringing the Japanese drone company and trying to do away with DJI? I don't know about the Japanese drone companies. I don't know that there's many of those out there, but there's definitely a push right now for many states to get rid of DJI drones and replace them with American-made drones, which on paper sounds like a great idea. I think in reality, it's a little bit premature. We don't have the drones to replace the DJI drones. We don't have the technology, the quality, the pricing that DJI offers. So until we do that, I think we should hold off onto pushing the competition when it's far inferior, I'm going to say. I got an offer on to take drone footage in New York City. I have known that I can't fly in New York City except some parks. So even though it looks like it's okay to fly with the air control app, no one can fly. Right. Yes, that is correct. New York City, except for a few parks, is limited by an old, it's called an navigation law, which is an old law that was put in place in New York City. And unfortunately, you can't fly drones there. Somebody is challenging the law right now. There was a bit of progress a week or so ago. We're trying to see where this is going. I can't talk much more about it, but there is some movement. So we'll see what happens. But it is being challenged right now. Ken is asking on YouTube, why don't you talk about any other brand than DJI? I do talk about other brands than DJI. We actually have an Autel right now, Evo 4 that's going out, that just came out. The Evo, what is it? The Evo Max, I'm sorry. It's the, Evo Max. And we've been testing it. We have plenty of other drones on our platform, on our shelf out there. I talk about drones that are coming out. So DJI is putting out a lot of drones. We talk about DJI. When other companies put out other drones, we talk about other drones, but it's been pretty quiet. Autel put out a new drone at the end of last year. It finally flew. We just have it. They're rumored to have another one coming out as well very soon. I don't remember the name of it. But we do talk about other brands, but there's not a whole lot of movement at the moment from other brands. Skydio hasn't put out a drone in years. Parrot did put out a drone. We did try it. We have a deep dive, Parrot NFE AI, which was a great drone, by the way. I really enjoy flying that. We have other deep dives on other drones on our platform. So no, we don't talk about just DJI. Any rumors about DJI classing their drone for flight over people? I think somebody asked that earlier. No rumors at the moment. And I'm going to tell you why. I think that there's not enough interest from manufacturers, not just DJI, but other ones as well, to create and put money into R&D to create a drone that flies over people that meets the requirements of the FAA. And I think the reason is because there's not enough of a market for this. I don't know how many people would be willing to spend extra money to be able to fly over people, because it's not just submitting paperwork to the FAA. You have to meet the requirements of Category 2 and Category 3 primarily. Category 4 is kind of out of the picture. And it's going to need a parachute, more than likely. Even then, it may or may not even qualify for that, which means that, well, it's an added expense. It's probably another $1,000. Are you willing to spend the money from a Mavic 3 plus another $1,000 on top of it, and then maybe even some more money because they had to do R&D and submit the paperwork? So I don't think that there is actually a market for it. And I think even if there was a drone, I think the number of people willing to spend that money just to fly over people is not there. And that's just my personal take, but who knows what happens. Have you seen the movie Ambulance? Lots of cool FPV. I love drone shots in movies and TV. And are there any movie or shows using drones that you like? It's a great question. I have not seen Ambulance, but I have heard a whole lot about it. We met the young kid, and now I can't remember his name. I'm terrible with names, by the way. Vanover, yeah, Vanover. We met him in Texas one night, and really cool kid. He was. It was great because it was a small event and he was out there flying and racing. And then a ton of kids came to see him and ask him questions. And he was just super open, super laid back, down to earth, and talking to them like, he wasn't a superstar, which he is. And then now he got this gig flying, and I know he's got other gigs flying for other movies and stuff. So I love TV shows. We talk about TV shows here in the office all the time, and every time I see a drone shot, I have to call it out. My wife rolls her eyes. There's a lot of TV shows. The one of the coolest use of drone, I think, is Handmaid's Tale, where you have the cinematography in this show is just amazing in the first place, but they actually have a lot of really cool usage of drones, more than just doing an outside shot. They have full on scenes using the drone. So that's my answer. Beyond Part 107, what certifications do Hollywood movie makers have? They may have different waivers available to fly over moving vehicles on set. So that's kind of a world of its own right here, where you have to ask for that kind of permission. But they also, a lot of times, they have just film permits for filming in different locations. There's nothing else from the FAA perspective. So there's no certification specifically for that. They may have a waiver to fly over 55 pounds aircraft, which a lot of these larger aircraft that they're using are over 55 pounds. So in this case, you would need to have a Part 61 certificate, which is private pilot, commercial pilot, and all these things, or have a specific waiver to bypass that. If you want to fly over 55 pounds, please email me, because we have a process that we can have you go through in order to get approval to fly over 55-pound aircraft with a Part 107 certificate. It takes a waiver with the FAA, and we have a contact that has done that and can help with it. And we actually do the training for that. Okay, next question. Beyond Part... no, I just read that one. Do you know if the Mini 3 Pro will ever have cruise control? I do not. But what I know is that DJI does add functionalities from time to time, and they might add it in the future. Who knows? That's always a hard thing to know, because DJI doesn't talk about their future improvements that they do to drones. So they may or may not add it. I don't know. I shoot real estate photos and add property line, but find it difficult to place them on the photo. I wonder if there's some resources as to how to do them more accurately. This is a tough one, Matthew. And I'll tell you why it's even tougher, because in some states, you might actually get in trouble for doing that. We talked about survey early on in this video. The board of surveyors in some states say that if you put lines on your photos, it now is equivalent of a survey, and you need to have a surveying certificates for that. And they've gone after people for doing that. I think it was in North Carolina, but I may be wrong, where there was this big battle going on for a while because of that. So I know it's not your question, but be careful with doing this. Make sure that you research the topic first to make sure that in your state, it's not something that's frowned upon that can get you in trouble with the board of surveyors, because they're allowed to issue fines. And I don't know how they have that power, but they can. So have you... Photoshop. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. So to answer your question, Photoshop is probably the best way to do this, to add those lines on here. As far as, yeah, Photoshop is probably, or not After Effects, Illustrator, AI, yeah, Adobe Illustrator.
And then maybe using native photos to get your property lines correct.
Yeah, using different types of photos from different angle to see exactly where things are. From a nadir photo from the very top, looking down just to see maybe a landscape, or tree, or landmark somewhere on the property. Yeah, that can be pretty difficult. Justin is asking, have you ever flown a drone from a boat? Any settings that you recommend? I have not from a boat, but I have from a car. One time we did a testing of a battery, how long the battery was going to fly in the middle of nowhere. And we flew from the car with a visual observer in the back looking at the drone the whole time that we were flying. Same thing with the boat, quite frankly. It works the same way, except you don't get wet when you stop and get out of the car. But I would say be careful with your RTH, your return to home settings. Some drones have the ability to do RTH back to the controller, so you don't have to keep updating it. But just remember that wherever you took off from, that is now your return to home position, which means that if you lose connection while you're on the boat, the drone is going to try to go back to where you started from. If you can set the controller and the drone to go back to the controller, or if you can update your home point, then you're going to want to do that so that it doesn't mess up. Or you can have your drone hover in case you lose signal. So you have a way to set it in most drones. You have a way to set it to do something different if you lose signal. So you can set it to hover, and then it's not going to try to go back home. You'll have to go back and get it, but that's something to pay attention to. The other thing I'm going to say is another setting you want, well, not a setting, but a technique. You want to figure out that you can take off and land to and from the drone, to and from the boat. So make sure that you know how to hand catch depending on the size of the boat. If it's a ship, then you might be able to land there. But if it's not, you got to be careful. And make sure that you don't land while the boat is moving, which can make it difficult because the GPS, the drone is going to come down like this and land in most cases and just do the auto landing. And if the boat is moving, then that's going to cause an issue. You might land in the water. So just keep that in mind. And then from a legal perspective, you cannot fly from a moving vehicle, which a boat is, unless you are in an area with very few people, a sparsely populated area, the FAA calls it. So don't do it if there's a lot of people around or houses. Then that's not something that you can legally do. I think that covers it. I know you have to fly within visual line of sight. Does it count if I can see my beacon light on my drone, but not the drone? Timothy, no, it doesn't. The FAA defines visual line of sight as being able to see the altitude, attitude of the aircraft, and the direction of flight. So you have to be able to see more than just a little dot on the horizon, okay? And then the light beacon is not just going to be enough in this case. So you have to find what the orientation of the aircraft is going to be. Wow, caught up to all those questions. I'm going to take that moment to drink. Cheers. Any other questions? Put them in here. This cannot be all the questions. We've gone 45 minutes. It's pretty good. What else can we talk about? I'm going to go in the comments and see. Carl Blessing is here. I recognize Carl. Wolfpack is here. Hey, Wolfpack. You know who you are. Justin. Who else do we have in the chat? Timothy Fisher, Casey Walker, Chris Richardson.
Someone said also to check GIS data to drop property lines.
Oh, GIS data to draw property line. Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good idea.
That might be walking the line.
Yep. Good question from Todd. The question that nobody wants to answer. How do all YouTubers fly their drones so far away from themselves? Well, they do it illegally most of the time. I'm not going to say all of them, but most of them do it illegally just because they can get away with it. I hate to say it this way. Oh, on that topic, we have great news because today we just received a BVLOS, Beyond Visual Line of Sight waiver to do range tests legally. So we submitted to the FAA a couple months ago a waiver in order to fly beyond visual line of sight, the pilot away from the drone as far, well, up to 10 miles. We have a 10-mile corridor that we can use that's in the middle of nowhere, Arizona. And we will be able to legally test range for drones, which is really cool. So we will be doing what these YouTubers are doing, but we'll be doing it legally and safely. Legally is not the only thing, but safely as well. So congratulations to Jason in our team for creating the paperwork, submitting it, and getting it approved on first try too. 99% first try. We had to give them one more thing, but it was never denied. So we're pretty excited about this. So you'll see photos pretty soon or videos pretty soon of us doing this. And yes, we still have to have visual observers, which is okay by us. We wouldn't want to do it any other way. We'll have a visual observer chasing the drone basically on that area that we're going to be in. So that's pretty cool. On the visual line of sight at night, if you have lights, red, green, that show orientation, would that help in that area? Yes, it would definitely help to have that. Obviously, at night, you're not going to be able to see everything, but you still need to be able to meet those requirements. So having lights, colored lights on the sides of the drone, red and green, like you have on traditional aircraft, then yes. Can non-federal government organizations restrict drone flight and bypass FAA rules? Can they? It's a good question. I've never thought about it. I mean, the FAA is, I don't think that they would, because the FAA is the agency in charge of the safe and efficient use of the airspace. So I don't think that they could. Now, can they push the FAA to have certain regulation? Yes, and it's happened with remote ID. We know that. So directly, no. Indirectly, yes. It's the government, so they can do whatever they want. I hate to say it this way. Is there a government by the FAA that covers all you need to know for Part 107? There's a document by the FAA that tells you everything that you need to study. It's called the why am I having a brain fart? It's called the ACS, the Airman Certification Standard. The Airman Certification Standard is a document that tells you everything that you need to study for any FAA certificate. And that's what we use to build our course. So you can read that document. You can say, okay, I need to study this and this and this, and then go find the information. Or you can enroll in our course because we've done all of that for you, for cheap. Okay. If we end up not being able to use lens authorization, do we need to cancel it in the loft? No, I don't think so. It doesn't really hurt anything. I don't know. I'm going to say no. I don't think there is any downside to canceling or to not canceling it. Carl says, have you ever needed to spend extra time matching drone footage with land camera footage, and what tool did you use to help? Ooh, that's a good question. Yes, the X-Ride color passport, absolutely something that you should be using to help match. It's tough sometimes to match the color differences between different cameras. My recommendation is, if you can, use log footage, because it's going to be a lot easier to use the same LUT in post in order to make it look the same. But yeah, it can be problematic for sure. The Inspire 2 is famous still for that. Very difficult to grade to match other cameras. If you have different cameras, I recommend that you do some testing to see what works best. The X-Ride passport is definitely going to help. I've done that before, where I held it in front of the camera just to make sure that I had a reference. You have to make sure that you use the lighting correctly on it, that it's not in a shadow, that it's actually lit up by the sun. And then you have to do it pretty often, because the color of the sun changes throughout the day. And then also with like different clouds and overcast layers. So, but yes, that's a good start, the color passport. Doing your white balance, I also like to match the white balance to be the same on all cameras. That's a good start as well. Fixed white balance, not auto white balance. Auto white balance is impossible to get back if it messes up during flight, which it will. So we set ours at 5600 Kelvin across all cameras. That way it's easier to edit in post. Next question. My question is about rendering assistance with your drone during an emergency. Would a Good Samaritan law apply if you needed to break any FAA regulations? I don't think Good Samaritan laws were designed for this. The FAA says that you can break any regulation in an emergency. You just got to be able to be able to explain to the FAA afterwards if you're going to do that. I think I've mentioned this before. If it's an emergency where you can render assistance to save somebody's life, I don't think, and you did it within the common sense laws, I don't think anybody at the FAA is going to blink twice and come get you in trouble. Now, if you did stupid stuff while doing that, then yeah, I might have a talk with you. So how soon will BVLOS be a certificate and not a waiver, if ever? Drones are much safer now, and I'm not talking 5 miles. There is a movement right now in the industry to make BVLOS more routine, and I think it will happen. When is anybody's guess? You know, this is the government. This is the FAA. They move at the speed of government, and it's not always as fast as we want to. Will it happen? I think it will. I think we will see more and more routine flights done under a waiver and then eventually without a waiver. Will it be a new certificate? I think it's not going to be a certificate. I think it's going to be potentially it's going to be a rating that is added into your certificate, your current remote pilot certificate. Just like right now, we have ratings to fly under instrument conditions. When you have a pilot certificate, an airplane pilot certificate, then we might see the same thing in the future. We'll see. I think it's going to be really interesting. The FAA Reauthorization Act is coming up really soon, and for 2023, which is this year, and hopefully we'll see some new things in there. Are there tools that can take a drone out of the air? Oh, yes, there is. Called lasers. We have a friend, I don't know if I can mention his name, but we have a friend that does testing. He flies Phantom 4s, and then the government takes them out of the air using lasers. and it's quite fun, apparently, from what he says. And he's had dozens, maybe even hundreds of Phantom 4s that have been taken out of the air using lasers. So yes, there is ways to force an aircraft to RTH, to return to home. There is ways for companies to take over drones as well. So yes, there's a lot of options. There's nets that have been used before. Now, with that being said, not everybody can take a drone out of the air. Not every branch of the government can take drones out of the air. Local police, I don't think, is allowed to take drones out of the air. So there's still a lot of regulations around it. But if it becomes a threat, or feels like it becomes a threat, then yes. When I fly in my small town, I see a warning that I could lose control if I fly over the courthouse jail. That I see a warning that I could lose control if I fly. Jails, courthouses are not protected. Jails and juvenile centers are typically restricted areas by the FAA and also by DJI. So if you have a DJI drone and you're getting close to one of these, that's probably what you're seeing, where they're telling you that you cannot enter that airspace. So I would stay away from them. You do not want to be flying over a jail. You do not want to be flying over a juvenile center. The courthouse, unless there is a special restriction where you are, typically are not covered by any of this. Flying over jails is a terrible, terrible idea, and that will definitely get you in trouble. So please don't be that person. How can I not overbank the aircraft? I've just started flight training. Overbanking. So this is an airplane question from Will. How can you not overbank? You have to just be very gentle with the flight controls. And I know it sounds very simple right now. It sounds very difficult right now, but it's something that you will get the hold of. When you turn the aircraft, you're just going to turn a little bit to establish the aircraft into the turn. And then after this, you're going to stop turning. So it's not like a car where you have to maintain the flight control in that position. You're going to want to turn and then kind of keep it right there, and the aircraft is going to maintain the turn. So you'll get to it eventually. Definitely something that's not easy at first, and you have to be very gentle. An aircraft can be flown with just one finger. You can just move the flight control with one finger, and that's all you really need. So don't input too much into the flight control. That's all I have to say. Okay. Any other questions? Will DJI ever make the Air 2 with built-in or retrofit for identification? We don't know. We don't know. The DJI is not really telling us. They're being pretty vague about this. So we hope, but we'll see. Is there a website or an app that you recommend for pilots to get freelance work? Well, I don't know. The reason I'm thinking about it, there are websites, but I don't know if I want to give them the light of day because I believe that they're damaging the industry by underpaying the pilots. But there are some places where you can submit your information and then they'll send you jobs every once in a while. Now, be ready to be underpaid, grossly underpaid. I'm talking about $40, $50 for a few hours of your time, which might sound good to some of you. But if you have to drive, if you have to get insurance, if you have to do all these things, then it all depends on what you value your time to be. Okay. So yes, there are places. Again, like I said, I don't know if I want to mention them out loud, but it's often easier to go and try to find your own work. It'll be more rewarding, and then you'll be able to charge a little bit more than what you would get paid through those websites. Practicing photography says, can RTH be shut off? Not. So I think I'm guessing this is following the question from before. Yeah, taking out of the air. Okay. Can RTH be shut off? The people that are potentially taking over your drone, if they jam the signal, then the aircraft is likely going to go into RTH, and then you'll get the drone back. If they take over the control, then they're not, because they're going to take it somewhere else. It's difficult to say exactly what they're going to do. It all depends on the type of drone that you have as well. Follow-up question, can the FAA monitor flying beyond visual line of sight on a YouTube video, and can they be fine from your video footage? Can you be fine from your video footage? Yes, you could. There was a famous case in Philadelphia with a person that shall not be named that got in trouble and for flying beyond visual line of sight and doing a lot more than that. Now, I'm going to say this. The FAA doesn't really go on YouTube to go and find people that are flying beyond visual line of sight. If that person gets reported, then they have to investigate. So it's possible that somebody may get a phone call from the FAA because they posted a video, somebody saw it, reported it to the FAA. Can you get in trouble for it? Yes, you could, with the right or the wrong, whatever you want to look at it, the right amount of detail available to the FAA inspector, you could get in trouble. So the easiest way to avoid this is to not do it and to not post it online. Might sound obvious, but I thought I heard something about a company creating a system that would make DJI aircraft compliant and blue. Do you have any information on such a system? Yes, these are our friends at DroneSense that are creating a system that would not necessarily make it compliant because there are still Chinese components on the inside of the aircraft, but it would make the data way more secure, which brings the question of if this company can bypass DJI doing anything with the data, then is it worth considering as a blue UAS or not? That's a question. Right now, it doesn't because it still has Chinese components in it, which disqualifies the aircraft right away. So even if an American-made company made a drone, but it has Chinese component, it doesn't automatically make it blue. It just means that it disqualifies from being blue. So is there a site to trade drones? I have a spare Avata with sticks and goggles and like to swap for an original Mavic 3 if anyone is interested. I would say go on Facebook and see if somebody wants to do that. There are some places where you can post these things for sale. So find a group that does that. Appreciate the Pilot Institute Wiki to share local rules. Thank you. Do you see an opportunity for apps such as air control to cover more local takeoff and landing regulations. Air control is working on that. I can tell you that. We've actually been talking with them about helping share some of the information that we found. They've added some local restrictions already in their data, and they actually have a they have a login location for cities and municipalities to log in and create local restrictions so they can share with users in there. So it's good. Well, I don't like local municipalities making their own rules, but at least if they do, they can share them with the pilot community. Does the Mavic 3 Mini have a function to record the video on the controller SD card and the aircraft SD card? So depending if you're using, I'm guessing you're using a smart controller, the DJI RC or the RC Pro, there is a screen record functionality. It will not record the screen directly without all of the display stuff on it, unless you put it into full screen mode, which I think is just a swipe up. But that's the way that we do it, that when we have to record the controller, that's what we do. We usually record directly from the controller. Now, if you're on your phone, I would recommend that you use your phone's ability to do screen recording, which I know on the iPhone is just a swipe down and pushing a button. So. All right, folks, we are getting close to the end. So any questions that you have, put them in there now, and then we're going to shut down the questions for a while and then end it. It's 5 o'clock here, which is went by fast. Pure Enjoyable Sleep says, what would be the best way to get into the FPV world? Ooh, that's a tough one. The FPV world is difficult to get in a sense because of the amount of knowledge that it takes to build your own quad if that's what you want to do, and if you're not, then you have to find a quad that's already built, but then you have to learn to fix it when you break it, which eventually will happen. So my recommendation, and I know some people may not agree with this, my recommendation is buy a DJI FPV. And I know we talk a lot about DJI, but the reason I mention this is because that's the way I did it. We get the DJI FPV, and I had never really flown FPV. And that allowed me to take off, fly to about 200 feet, 300 feet, and then eventually put it in full manual mode. And from here, I was able to figure out how the drone flew without crashing it, because if I get into trouble, then there is the, call it the oh shit button. And you just push that pause button and the aircraft goes back into GPS mode and just basically hovers right here, okay? So it's great because it prevents you from crashing. Now, some people say you have to crash in order to learn. I have to disagree with that. I think you can still take some risk and then eventually grow your confidence to the point where you can fly another FPV drone. So that would be my recommendation to get into it. Again, like I said, some people might disagree with that. Have you done any flying with the Holystone drones? No, we have not. This is something that we've purposely stayed away from, just because of the feedback that we've received from many people, and quite frankly, I don't know how to say it, but no, we have not. Because when we try to recommend drones to people, we want drones that are going to be long lasting. And I know a lot of people start with the Holystone drones, but and I'm not saying anything bad about them, but no, there's not a range that we are interested into getting into at this stage. Six Flags has a no flyover rule. I wouldn't fly over their park, but could one do it since it's a private property thing and not an FAA thing? Six Flags cannot have a no flyover rule. They don't control the airspace, so they can prevent you from taking off and landing from their property. You wouldn't want to fly over Six Flags because there's people there, so you wouldn't be able to do that anyway. But when there's no one in the park, you should absolutely be able to do it, as long as you're taking off from private property. As long as you follow all the other FAA rules, they're not allowed to prevent you from flying over their property. Steve Yu says, as a recreational pilot, would Part 107 have any advantages? yes, Part 107 has quite a few advantages over recreational flying. We mentioned that earlier. You'd be able to fly higher than 400 feet if you're within 400 feet of an object, of an obstacle. You would also be able to request flying higher than grid numbers if you're flying in Lance. So if Lance is limited to 50 feet and you wanted to fly at 100 feet, you can only do that as a Part 107 pilot. Submitting waivers, you can only do that as a Part 107 pilot. I think I'm missing a couple more, but those are the big ones. Obviously, getting paid, and we've kind of mentioned that before. Flying for non-recreational purposes, you would need a Part 107 certificate. But yeah, there's quite a few advantages to do this. Can a 4409 pilot fly from and over a moving vehicle? No, you cannot fly from / over moving vehicle. So that's a two-part question. Can you fly from a moving vehicle under 44809? I do not know of any restrictions against it. So yes, you technically could. Those restrictions, by the way, would be in the CBO guidelines. Can you fly over moving vehicles? No, because every single CBO guidelines that are out there prohibit from flying over moving vehicles. So no, you could not, unless you find a CBO that allows it, but the FAA isn't going to approve that. Sandy says, I'm a high school teacher. What is going on with the education field with young people and drones? It's a great question, Sandy. There's quite a few programs available out there for STEM. I would recommend talking with our friends at Flight Test. Flight Test has a full STEM program that they have available to people who've been doing this for a long time, and they're doing a great job at it. So I would send you over there. But as far as drones, that's going to be up to you and what you want to do in the classroom. But yeah, take a look at Flight Test. They have some great things. Okay. I think we get to the end of it. And we put a link to Flight Test in here. All right, folks, we're 5 minutes over. I don't want to take any more of your time, but appreciate you coming in, basically asking all your questions. And we'll be here again in 2 weeks. We do this every 2 weeks. And yeah, come back again. Ask, bring your friends, bring a beer, do whatever you want to do. I know it's almost 8 o'clock on the East Coast, so time for you guys to go to bed. And then we'll see you next time. And then XJet said, I'm just in time to say goodbye. Yes, you are. Bruce, come back next week, an hour earlier at 4 p.m. our time. I don't know what time it is for you over there, but it's probably pretty early in the morning, I'm going to guess. All right, folks, that's it. That's all we got. And we will see you next time. Cheers.